Send in the red shirts.
Vis Pacem Bellum. Now, of course, with my intellect and knowledge of Latin and Greek derivatives and the so many years of French and Romantic languages that I've studied, I was able to translate that into see if vis, as in to see, vista, into see, possum, peace. If you want to see peace, parabellum, then go by fighting. So that's how I translated it. I looked it up and it actually means if you want peace, prepare for war. So, I was off a little bit, but I got the basic knowledge down there. At any rate, it's another one of these long titles, and I'm like, hey, listen, writers, I get it. You graduated PhD in English Lit, you read Shakespeare, you know the works of Chaucer. Wonderful, that's great. Just give me my short titles, please, that tell me what's going to go down in the episode. Plus, it makes it harder to fit a title like that into a screen that's going to be shrunk down to the size of a YouTube screen. So, just give us a break, will you? I have to say, this episode left me kind of flat as just like the last two. It wasn't horrible. It just came off as filler to get us to the fall finale, which is next week. So you have a story where you set up, for the first time on Discovery, we see the crew involved in a first contact situation, which is great. This is the first time, I think this is the first time we're seeing them off the ship. So the writers create a new alien race for first contact with Starfleet. But what we get in the main story, because there were two stories, the main story was the Pavans and Starfleet having to utilize their transmitter, which somehow they can modify to expose the Klingons, which are cloaked up in space. Not sure how that works, but that's the main plot. And so rather than introducing us to a fully fleshed out alien race, which is typical for Star Trek when they do this, at least in the past, the Pavans, which are basically just these like spore-like creatures, they look like dust, and they're part of the planet. They're just reduced to a plot device. Nothing really happens. The only point of this race is so that they have some sort of conflict with Starfleet to getting to use the transmitter. The conflict was, I guess it was the origins of the Prime Directive or some other directive where you can't use alien technology unless you have permission, which makes sense. But we don't learn anything about the Pavans. We do learn that they are a peaceful alien culture, and their main goal is to get rid of discord anywhere they find it. They are peace-loving. They want to eliminate or eradicate any type of conflict, which is great, but they don't really do anything with it other than reveal that Saru really does not belong in Starfleet. He gets invaded, or he gets taken over by these alien spores, and he's all of a sudden really peaceful, and he decides he doesn't want to leave the planet. And, as a viewer, we're thinking, oh, well, he's definitely under some kind of mind control. But it turns out that because his race is a prey species, and he makes it clear that he lives his entire life in fear, his actions where he attacks Burnham, he attacks Ash Tyler, they aren't really influenced by the aliens so much more than they are influenced by the fact that Saru is always afraid. I don't want to say he's a coward, but he's always full of fear, and he doesn't want to leave the planet, and he doesn't want Michael to be successful in activating that transmitter, because that means that the Klingons might come and destroy the planet, and that means that they would destroy Saru's idyllic life, where he's no longer afraid of, or he's no longer afraid, period, and he wants to stay on that planet. So it's a little disheartening to learn that Saru's actions were of his own well-being or of his own volition. Maybe they were augmented a little bit, but I mean, you got to really stop telling me that Michael is unfit for command when you have Lorca, who did the dirt he did with his previous ship, the Baron, I forget the name of the ship. And now we have Saru, a character, again, that I like, but he's proven in this episode that he's full of fear, and he will do whatever he has to get rid of that, even if it compromises the well-being of the crew. So what I'm saying is, I didn't really like the fact that we had a first contact situation where rather than learning more about the aliens, which is what makes First Contact interesting, the aliens were used as a plot device for two things. Just reveal another side of Saru, which I don't know if they're even going to explore any more than this, and B, to just provide some sort of conflict in terms of getting the transmitter up and running. Other than that, this episode really had no other weight to it. The B plot of the episode revolved around Laurel, the female Klingon, who I'm not sure where her loyalties lie. And this is the problem I'm starting to have. It's starting to get boring and old. I mean, it's one thing to have a mystery where I am not sure what is coming or what's happening. That's great. I don't want to know everything. But after a certain while, you got to stop with the misdirection. And what I mean by that is you have Laurel, who a few episodes previous, she tells Vok that he has to sacrifice everything to regain his honor. By the way, I've heard from some people that Vok is actually Ash Tyler, and that would be supported by the fact that Laurel told Vok that he has to sacrifice everything. One might read that as he has to give up his Klingon identity, and maybe that he went undercover as Ash Tyler because that's where Lorca found Ash in that Klingon prison. And if you remember, Ash says that the reason he survived for so long is because the female Klingon leader of that prison has taken a liking to him. So I'm just saying that it's a very interesting theory, but I digress. One moment, it seems like she's in line with the Klingons when she tells Vok what he has to do to regain his honor. Then in this episode, she indicates that she wants to defect, and she's very convincing at it, and it seems like we're led to believe that. But then once the main Klingon, I forget his name, Vol, I think that's his name, he catches Laurel and Admiral Cornwell while they are, I guess, trying to escape. And Laurel plays it off like she's captured Cornwell, and she beats her up a little bit. The Admiral does put in a valiant fight, but then it looks like she kills the Admiral and drags her into some sort of antechamber. So now I'm thinking, okay, it looks like she did kill her. So I guess she is on the Klingon side again. But then when they go into the antechamber, that's where Laurel finds all of her comrades dead, and I don't know if they've been partly eaten. I don't know what this is with the Klingon diet all of a sudden. But she says she swears to avenge them. And I'm like, okay. Then she goes to the main Klingon leader, who makes it seem like he wants her on his side, and he paints her face, and then all of a sudden he says, okay, now I'm going to show you what we do with traitors. And I'm like, what is going on here? There's a little bit too much misguidance or misdirection. Come on, guys, just settle in, now it's time for you to start holding my hand and telling me where you're going to lead me, okay? Since we're talking about the Klingons, it struck me while I was watching this episode. Now, I've complained about how the Klingons look and how they dress, but because I like the show overall, I've made peace with that these are the Klingons that they're giving us, and I'm still holding out hope that maybe we'll see the Klingons, the Worf type of Klingons, appear on this show. Maybe when they reveal another house or all the different houses, we'll see those Klingons. The one problem that I really do have, and I think I've pinpointed it, is that these Klingons really don't act with honor. Even when the Klingons were acting like assholes. You think about Star Trek VI, and even in the TNG moving forward, when they are supposedly friends of the Federation, even when there were those few jump-offs with the Federation and Klingons, the Klingons weren't like devious, or they weren't, as far as I remember, they didn't hide anything from you. They let you know where they stood. These Klingons, they're all about subterfuge. When Laurel goes and says that she wants to bow down to this Klingon leader, I forget it, Vol, I think his name is. That's not, and then when she's really thinking about defecting, that's not how the Klingons got down that I know. The Klingons that I remember, they would say, look, I'm defecting. And they might get an ass kicking or might get killed, but then they would welcome that because it would have been an honorable death. Just like Laurel says, when the dude starts making fun of her scars, she says, "I'll wear them as a badge of honor." Okay, same thing with Vol. I'm going to call him Vol. I don't know if that's his name or not. He paints her face and this and that, goes through all these little machinations, and after he's done with all that, then he says, "Oh, okay, well, really, I know you were lying to me, so we're going to teach you how we treat liars." See, Klingons wouldn't do that. The Klingons that I know and love, he would have gone up to her and said, "You're a traitor. Get her out of here." He wouldn't go through all that James Bond villain type of stuff. Some more little basic points I just wanted to bring out. I love the dogfight at the beginning of this episode. As f***ed up as Lorca may be, that's the dude you want on your side in a dogfight. He's the guy you want in a battle. I love seeing him get down on the bridge. He kind of reminds me of Kirk, if Kirk were a little darker. I just love the way he commands his bridge. But the problem I have with that scene, again with the problems I know, was that we're introduced to another Federation vessel, the Gagarin. Now, real quick, I was kind of at peace with the different uniforms that they wear and the different design of the Discovery, because this ship has been transformed into a war vessel. And I was thinking that, well, given that in the tie-in novel Desperate Hours, which I assume is canon, given that Christopher Pike, the current captain of the USS Enterprise, which is a Constitution-class vessel, that establishes the fact that the traditional original series polo shirts are uniforms that are currently being used in Starfleet. It also tells me that the Constitution-class vessels do exist during this same timeline. So I'm trying to understand, how is it that you have the Gagarin, the Glenn, the Discovery, and the Shenzhou? Why are these guys wearing these different uniforms if, in fact, Christopher Pike and the Enterprise exist in this timeline as per the novel Desperate Hours? It doesn't make any sense to me. Can any of you help me with that? If you can, please leave them in the comments below. I'm dying to hear, because it has to work for me. I want it to work for me. Next thing is, when we first see them on the planet, and that was a kind of really clunky editing. We're in the middle of a dogfight, then all of a sudden, Lorca says, "Yeah, I got a team down there on Pava right now to take care of this issue," when he's talking to the Vulcan hologram. Then all of a sudden we cut down to the planet. We don't really get any kind of lay of the land. We're just there all of a sudden, and we just have to accept what they're saying through exposition. But my question is, when they first meet the Pavans, why does Saru start talking in English to them? And why doesn't Michael try to use the universal translator at that point? They wait till they get to this hut in the middle of the forest, which I don't understand why that hut exists. If these Pavans are part of the planet, unless they're humanoids on this planet, why is there a hut in the middle of the forest? It just seems a little convenient. So again, why does Michael wait till that moment to use the universal translator after they've been led through the forest and into this hut, which could possibly be a trap? Real nitpick I had was, unless the phrase, what is the phrase? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. Unless that's a phrase that's a Vulcan proverb and not just a brilliant way of summing up a situation by Kirk and Spock in Star Trek II, which is how I've always felt that phrase was. It was just something that they came at to each other as friends. We hear that quote in this episode. Writers, don't do that. You're not doing me any favors by thinking that I'm going to react like, "Oh, that's so cool. They said the same thing that Kirk and Spock said in Star Trek II." Don't do that. I don't need those fanboy moments. Don't do that. So unless that's a Vulcan proverb that Burnham would have known, and it would explain why Spock says it in Star Trek II, don't make those connections that you don't have to. It's not necessary.
And you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
So yeah, overall, this episode, again, like the last two, left me cold. And as I said, mainly because when you create a new alien race and you want to write a story about first contact, the sky's the limit. But here, the aliens really were just a plot device. The only purpose of these aliens was to, one, reveal a side of Saru's character, which I think wasn't necessary to do, because it made him look like a character who definitely does not belong in Starfleet. And two, their only purpose was to get the tower, the transmitter tower, to work. All that seemed like filler to get us to the end episode, because they needed the Klingons to arrive at Pava. So that's all this episode was. It seemed like it was just filler to get us to the end. And I just think, Discovery writers, you've got me hooked. You can't slack off now. Every episode counts. Keep the quality up that existed for the first 5 or 6 episodes. Like last week's episode could have been a great episode if you had just gone over that script with a red pencil a little bit more and gotten rid of some of those plot holes. This script could have been a lot better if you had taken a clue from some of the classic Trek episodes involving First Contact, where you put the emphasis on the aliens and not the crew, in terms of developing that relationship with a new alien culture. But having said all that, okay, next week, the fall finale. We won't get to see Discovery anymore until next year. So I am all on board. It looks like Michael Burnham's going to be in a tough spot when she's fighting Klingons by herself. I want to know if Admiral Cornwell is actually dead. If she is, it seems like such a waste, or an unceremonious way to get rid of that character. Kind of like they did with Landry. But okay, that's how these writers get down. I am still on board, but you guys got to bring it home. You guys got to make it worth me holding on to CBS All Access until next year. I'm still supporting. I still like the show. These last 3 episodes have left me a little bit cold, but I'm all in still for the finale. I will see you. We'll discuss it next week. See you then. Bye.